Welcome to the Outdoor Gibbon Podcast, episode number 2. You'll have to excuse the slightly croaky voice, but finally, after 2 years of avoiding it, COVID did catch up with the family. So we've all had 7 days off, still not completely recovered, but I thought I'd crack on while I've got this time and I'd get this podcast recorded. So hopefully you'll enjoy this one as well. So let's look back at my stalking journey. Obviously, I'd got the firearm. I was shooting a 243. It was a Deer legal rifle, but I still had that reservation of, do I want to go out and shoot a deer, and then how do I process it? It's a bit bigger than a rabbit. Same idea, still eats grass. It can't be that difficult. Talking to people on the forums, everybody said that I should go and register and get my DSC1. That course would help me with the deer stalking and it would give me everything I needed to know. So, phoned up Basque, found out where I could book on, signed up, paid my money. The course manual arrived, including the meat hygiene book. Lots of information. It was like, wow, this is pretty cool. What was I going to expect from the course? Well, hopefully this course was going to teach me everything I needed to know about deer stalking. So the day of the course arrives. Turn up, sit down, lots of people there. You're kind of that, what do you do, who are you, your introductions, and the course begins. Yeah, really informative. I'm learning lots of information about species of deer, what to look for, tracks, looking at them from behind, identification, where the deer are located in the UK, what caliber you can shoot them with, what time of year you can shoot them with. It's really, really informative, going through the process of grollicking on a video, etc., etc. Then, obviously, we go out and we do the shooting tests. Yeah, we can all shoot. We've done it used to be, you do your prone test. You'd fire 3 shots at the target. Then you'd fire 3 shots at a deer silhouette at prone, 3 shots kneeling, and 3 shots standing. It's changed now, but once you finish that, yeah, you can shoot a deer. Happy days. So you've passed the course, but does this actually make you a stalker? Well, you still had no hands-on experience. You still can't really go out and say, I can grollick this deer. Yeah, you've seen pretty pictures about how to identify it, what to look for in terms of disease. But for me, it was still, well, actually, no, I'm still not confident in going to do this by myself. So what was my next sort of, how am I going to get this confidence? Now, one of these things about these courses is you get to meet lots of different people. Now, as I said in the podcast 1, by being there and talking to people, I eventually met a friend, a very good friend, and I was invited, one, to first go and shoot at their club, so they could get to know me a bit more. And then I got an invitation that would I like to go to Ireland, deer stalking. So again, it developed from that. Now, the beauty of it is Andy was doing his deer stalking course, but he'd been shooting deer for years. So he knew lots about it. He was very hands-on, very experienced. And it just was a real pleasure because you could glean information from him. Now, I like to ask questions, so I quizzed him and found out as much as possible and watched everything we did while we were out stalking and shooting. And following somebody like that stalked Seeker for so long. Seeker deer are known as the ghosts of the forest anyway, but to be the stalker that follows them around the forest, you've got to be even more of a ghost. So he could move across the hillside very quietly or through the woods silently, always managed to ambush out on deer, and very rarely ever failed to bring something back. And that was just one of those things. It's like, well, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. It can't be that hard if he can do it every time. Yeah, think again. It was a complete mind opener when I actually had to do it by myself. So I posted a photo on my Instagram feed where I look completely drained, exhausted, and a bit of a mess. So let's go through that, as this was the first time of stalking a Seeker deer with Andy as my guide, using his rifle, and we'll explain to you exactly what happened and why it was such a changing point for me in my stalking career. So the Irish deer season runs from the 1st of September through to the end of February. You can obviously shoot stags between September and the end of December, and then you've got your hinds are in from January and February. So our trips were always planned in November and February, so we could have a time when you could go out on the stags, but in November you also are allowed to shoot the hinds at the same time, and then we'd go again in February purely for the hinds. So my first trip packed over all the kit that I had, which was basically a Harkila jacket because I'd been out pheasant shooting and things like that, some waterproof trousers, I think they were Sealand, a pair of hunter wellies. I had a knife, and I thought, I'm sorted out for deer stalking. I had some binoculars, but we'll talk about those later because that was a bit of a disaster. Upon arrival in Ireland, it had started to rain. We were shooting in County Wicklow. We'd travelled across on the ferry from Dublin. There was five guys, and I was a guest of Andy's. They'd stalked there. I think one of them had been stalking in Ireland for over 20 years. Now, Irish rain is one of those things. I've suddenly discovered that Irish rain and Scottish rain are very similar. But when it rains, you get wet. And having the kit I had, I thought, well, this will be all good. It works well in England. But no, you were just getting wet every day. So every time we were out stalking, it was raining. It didn't let up. You ended up coming home, trying to hang all the kit around a small wood-burning stove to dry it, be it your boots, your trousers, your coat, your rifle. It was just one of those things. It just was relentless. So, day 3 of the trip. In the morning, you get up, you squeeze yourself back into those slightly still damp, wet, cold clothes from the day before, and we were out early on the hill. It was chucking it down as usual, but this time it was a bit heavier than it had been, and we'd marched ourselves round this hillside, and we decided that as it was getting heavier, we were going to sit ourselves under a couple of big spruce trees and just wait. So we tucked ourselves in, crawled back off the ride and sat in there, and it just chucked it down. Ate some snacks. Andy was very good at making like large packs of flapjack that he would share with everybody. So stuffing flapjack, having a drink, I think it was a Capri Sun or something along those lines, and just watching the rain just drain off everything. All of a sudden the rain kind of stopped. It was sort of that one of those moments when a bit of sunshine comes out, the rain's gone away. So we kind of slithered out from under this tree as best you can, stood up, drained off, and walked forward about sort of 100 yards. And there was a ride, I remember it now, a ride down to the right. And something caught his eye, and he's like, get down, get down. So we got down, crept across, found a bit of a stile that went across this ride, and he said, get on here. And all of a sudden the hind stepped out. He goes, get the rifle ready. So I've got the rifle now up. I'm sat there. I've shot his rifle before, know exactly what it is. It's a Seiko 75 308. It's unsound moderated, really nice piece of scope on there. I'm looking down at it. He goes, you can see the hind. I'm like, I can see the hind. Another hind comes out. Another hind comes out. And he's like, right, I want you to take the first one because she's in the clearest spot. And then all of a sudden, he sees me looking down the scope. He's like, no, shoot the stag. And I'm like, what stag? And he goes, look to the right. And obviously the stag had just appeared from nowhere, completely clear, just stood there, broadside, middle of the ride. And I remember it now. There we are, rifle on it. You can feel your heart beating because it's the first time on a stag. And squeeze the trigger, and man, the ringing in my ears because of the nature of where we were, the trees around us, an unmoderated 308 firing a 150 grain bullet. It was like a cannon going off, and I still remember it to this day. And I remember watching the stag just hair off to the left. It just went straight across, followed everything, cleared, and that was it. I was like, oh, what's happened there? So you kind of get that bag of mixed emotion suddenly. It's like, why did it run? Where's it gone? What's going on? What are we doing now? And he's like, nope, nothing, reload. We're just going to sit here for a few minutes and wait. So did exactly what he said, reloaded, made sure I picked the case up because he reloaded his ammunition, gave him the case. We sat down and waited. We probably waited about 5-10 minutes. He goes, right, let's go. So we're up on our feet and we're trundling off down the ride. And I'm like, what are we looking for? And he goes, we're looking for pins. And I'm like, what are pins? And I'm there thinking, am I stupid now? what does this deer do? Does it drop something? He goes, no, you stupid idiot. Pins are fur. So when you've shot it, the bullet's gone straight through out the back side. It's what we're going to use to track it. I hadn't really thought about this. I thought when you shot a deer, it fell over and that was that. But obviously, the more you think about it, yeah, the bullet's gone through it. You've taken a heart shot. That thing's pumped up on adrenaline. It's going to run. So we get to the point, and he'd already worked out exactly where it had been shot. His knowledge and experience was great at that point. So I get down there, and he's got me looking round, and I suddenly see a clump of fluff on the ground. I'm like, there. He goes, right, get on your hands and knees. I'm like, why? He goes, now you've got to find the blood trail. And he knew he was going to make me work to find this deer. But I tell you what, by doing that, you never forget how to find a deer. So I'm there, I'm like, blood there. And he goes, good, keep going. And we're looking, and it's gone straight across the ride, and it's gone into a young plantation, thick, heavily grown, Sitka spruce. And I mean, we're going to fight to get into this. And he goes, we've got to go through that to find your deer. So I'm following each blood trail. He goes, if you lose it, you go back to the last one, and you keep going, and you start again, and you keep working through. So crawling hands and knees through this stuff, looking for it. I'm following trails of blood. Yep, there's a spot there and there's a spot there, and he's got me looking everywhere, and I'm still finding it. Another spot. And I've been probably now crawling for, I don't know, 30 metres, 40 metres, still going. And I'm like, it's gone. I can't find it anymore. No, it's still there. You keep going, keep crawling, keep looking. So I'm carrying on. I think it got it running about 60 to 70 metres into this forest. He'd found it because he was walking parallel to me, so he knew where it was, because it had obviously gone in, curled back, and fallen against the far side of a tree. I'm still looking, and I'm like, I can't find any more blood. It's gone. He goes, well, keep looking, and eventually caught eyes on it, and there it was, just lying there. And that's it. Your heart settles because you found what you've shot, so it hasn't gone away. You did hit it in the right place. He goes, yeah, good shot. It's a absolute nice position. He goes, right, now you got to get it out. Grab hold of its head. It can't go anywhere. It's dead. And we're going to drag it back out to the track. So we're dragging it through the forest. You can see that in the photo. I'm looking fairly sweaty. I thought I was quite fit at the time, but obviously dragging something of that size through thick forestry and all the rest of it that was soaking wet wasn't doing you any good. So got it back out on the track. He sat there. He's like, well, we'll get your picture now just for your memory. So we got a photo of it, and that's the start of me looking absolutely bedraggled. The next part, well, yeah, that really does put the test on you. So the time was marching on at this point, and he's like, well, we need to get back to the motor, because at the end of the day, the boys will all be back. We need to get back to the lodge as well. He goes, we won't grollock it here. You can do a full grollock back at the lodge because it'll be easier, and I can explain to you how everything works. I'm like, all right, okay. You're going to give me a hand then, drag it up the hill? He goes, nah, that's you. I'll go and tell the boys in the motor, and we'll drive up the track and meet you. It's just up that hill, over that, down that next one, and back across. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you've got to drag it out. You shot it. He goes, this is one lesson you'll learn. Never shoot a deer at the bottom of the hill. I was like, you're leaving me? He's like, you know where you're going. Just keep following the track the way we came in, and you'll get back to the road. I'm like, okay, it can't be that difficult. So that's it. He's off. He's got his rifle on his back, and he's marching away, and I just watch him disappear over the crest of the first hill. So I've started dragging this thing, and probably gone maybe 100, 200 metres. I'm huffing and puffing already. I'm starting to curse it. I'm like, why did I shoot this deer down here? Eventually it's like, I need something to put round it to drag it. So I took my belt off, wrapped that round it. I'm dragging with that, and I'm really huffing and puffing. Top of the first hill. Yeah, okay. It's not far now. Down the next hill. Oh, that's okay. It's downhill. It's moving a bit easier. It's coming with me. They're not steep hills. They're more gentle rolls. Up the second one, and I'm absolutely blowing, really blowing. And it's just like, this is why am I doing this? Of course, this thing's not grollocked either, so it's still got all its weight in it. And eventually, I get to the top of this one, and I see them all sat there at the van, and they're all like, well done, Pete. And I gradually get down to them. They all pick it up, chuck it in the back. Right, let's go. So because I'd shot my first deer, the tradition for this group was we'd stop at the garage on the way home and we'd buy Magnum ice cream. So we did that, had a Magnum ice cream, and then it was back to actually understand and see how to grollock it properly. I was going to be doing it. Well, I didn't know I was going to be doing it, but I was going to be doing it and explained all the way through what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, etc. And he was a very good teacher. He also explained everything really well. So the grollock was pretty straightforward. Did all of that, took the head off, left the head on the side, and one of the lads who was one of the Irish boys said, I'll sort that out for you. So I didn't realise, but he was going to take the head home, boil it out, mount it for me, and bring it back in a couple of days' time. So that really was the first sort of time out, actually stalking something, shooting it, and doing the whole process. Apart from having to drag it, where you curse that deer so much, the whole experience was really good. But I think the reason it was so good was it was well explained. But did I feel I could do it by myself? No, not at that point. I still didn't want to go out on my own. I still wanted to go out with him to get more experience, to see how it was done. And I think that's where the whole deer stalking level 1 kind of comes into its own. It gives you a fundamental understanding, but it doesn't give you the ability to be a stalker. So utilising that and then finding somebody to be a mentor or a guide or going out with somebody makes the world of difference. And it's getting somebody that can actually explain it. It's not just about them dragging you around the forestry, making you pull the trigger, doing all the hard work for you and going, well done, you shot a deer. That really doesn't give you any sort of true understanding. I think the only real way to get that learning curve, especially for me and other people, is to actually do the hands-on and be able to go, oh, okay, that's why we do that. That's why we use the knife this way. That's why we track the deer that way. And I think that's really important. So from sort of then on, I obviously went back to Ireland every year, every February, every November. I then started to build up confidence, going out on my own, managed to negotiate new land in Ireland through work contacts. So we ended up moving to a different estate, not private. It was private this time rather than being on sort of public forestry land and things like that. So every time you go out, it's still a learning curve. Every day is a school day. You'll always learn something different. So I've shot hundreds of deer now over the years, and you still see something that's different with everything you do. Whether it be the way the deer behaved, whether the reaction, whether it's something in the grollock, whether it's something to do with the tracking. Obviously tracking a deer up in Scotland compared to tracking a deer in Ireland, there's no real difference, but it's a different thing with roe, it's a different thing with seeker, it's a different thing when chasing a red round the hills. You kind of have to, everything's about environment, and the only way you learn about that is by listening to the people around you and the guides and seeing how it's all done. So after a number of years of stalking, well, it's quite a number of years actually, I decided it was probably about time I actually got this DSC Level 2 qualification, just so I've got that piece of paper. The world's changing, people want to see bits of paper. So signed up for it. The first time work got in the way and I never actually managed to complete the qualification. So basically paid again, and this time it had all moved online. Spoken to a few of the lads locally and found that one of their friends was an accredited witness. Had a chat with him and he said that he would happily be my witness as long as I covered his fuel and we go out stalking. So realistically, you can do it in 3 stalks. I think it took 4 for me because we had a one stalk that was a complete blank. But we got all of that done. It's changed again now. So with the new system, it's not like it used to be. But obviously the old-fashioned way was 3 witness stalks, going through the whole process, writing. He'd write his report, you'd write your report. They'd all get submitted, and then you'd have a telephone interview. So level 2. Done and dusted fairly quickly. And yeah, it's another piece of paper just to have, but it also proves that you really do know how to stalk, because you're being scrutinised, you're being watched on everything you do, be it from knowing your woodland, tracking your deer, shooting your deer, following up your deer, processing it, getting it ready to go either to the larder or personal consumption. So it was definitely worthwhile having it. It's also been one of those things, it finally ticks the box properly. I was on the competent persons register up here in Scotland for S&H, which allows you obviously for outer season shooting and night licenses. Especially it's important for certain forestry blocks that I do look after. DSC2 is a requirement or working towards it, so having it down there as a working towards, well, now I've ticked that box, so actually now it's a formality. Every year my licenses can be renewed with no major headaches, and you can carry on. So was it worth doing a DSC level 1, a DSC level 2? In the grand scheme of things, yes. The level 1 gives you all the knowledge you require. It doesn't make you a stalker, but it gives you the fundamentals, the ability to identify a deer. It proves you can shoot safely, game handling. It just takes you through all the basics. Yes, it's a lot of knowledge at the beginning, and you may not see it's that important, but it over time it becomes really good. What would I do after that? Yeah, I think for me the key was to actually get out and go stalking. If you've got loads of experience, go straight on and get your level 2. If you haven't, take time, get out, go shooting lots. Every day you're learning something. You can use that experience so that when you do come to do that level 2, it's not that daunting that you've got somebody watching you. It'll all be natural, it flows through. The key is, I don't think you're going to get shooting on, well, you won't get any shooting on sort of forestry land now unless you've got a level 1 and a level 2 or working towards it. Life nowadays is all about bits of paper at the end of the day. So if you can say I've got a level 1 and I've got a level 2, you're in a much better position, especially when it comes to firearms renewals, land acquisition, all sorts of things. Certificates are the key. So that draws this podcast to a close. Thank you again for listening. Hopefully we'll have another podcast out in a couple of weeks' time. This one is a bit earlier, but I suppose having COVID and having some time on my hands has allowed me just to get ahead of things. So yeah, just thanks for listening, and see you soon.